right. Hi, everybody. The Climate Change Working Group of Frederick County, or CCWG, welcomes you to Solar Options for Consumers. My co-host and I are really happy to see you all, and we hope that this workshop will answer your questions about solar energy options and encourage you to switch to renewable energy. This workshop is the realization of a recommendation made by CCWG in its recently released position paper on the effect of climate change on the county's energy needs and how to become carbon neutral in energy consumption. That paper can be found at envisionfrederickcounty.org. That's envision, E-N-V-I-S-I-O-N, frederickcounty.org if you're interested. I am Jane Sachs. I'm a retired lawyer and clinical and forensic psychologist serving on the CCWG Executive Committee. Over the last 20 years, I've worked on a variety of environmental and climate change related issues in Frederick County. My co-host, Joanne Horn, is another member of the CCWG Executive Committee. And Joanne trained as a research microbiologist and has worked on a range of projects, including those related to environmental issues and global health. She also serves on the board of the Washington Academy of Sciences. Ron Kaltenbaugh, whom many of you have already met, our Zoom coordinator, is the third member of the team. Ron has been working on climate change and advocating for electric vehicles, or EVs, for about 10 years. An EV driver since 2012, Ron is the president of the Electric Vehicle Association of Greater Washington. He's been giving regular climate change presentations since 2017. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this virtual podium over to Joanne, who will introduce our moderator.
You're muted, Joanne.
We had to have at least one incident so that. So welcome everybody, and especially want to give a shout out to all our speakers. Thanks so much for taking the time and effort to put your presentations together. And you know, in response to both market needs and changing regulations, there's been a number of new ways to access solar energy in the past few years, and this is great news for everybody, but it's become a little bit confusing. And so really the aim of our workshop here today is to kind of try to sort through these options for folks and see what might work for them. We intended this to be really an educational program. And Jane and I invited our speakers and moderator, knowing that they were, knowledgeable in the field. That said, they also represent companies in some instances or other types of organizations. But just as a disclaimer, I want to say that CCWG does not endorse any of these products specifically. That said, we have provided the speakers with an option to talk more about their products in breakout rooms after the Q&A session. So you're welcome to join those. And Ron will address more of that when the time comes. I just want to remind everybody to please mute or unmute when you're speaking. And also, a note that we are recording this session, and the recording will be available. We'll distribute the link for that going forward. So I just want to introduce John Dean. John's our moderator for today. He's the owner of JD Energy, which is an energy and environmental forecasting firm. He founded in 1987. He publishes a series of short and monthly forecasts for people in the industry and for buyers and sellers in the market, as well as long-term projections. John's firm addresses both cost and technological issues associated with solar and wind power, as well as fossil and nuclear power. So John, take it away.
Thank you, Joanne, and welcome to all the participants and presenters. I'll make this very short. I think each presenter has approximately 20 minutes, and hopefully we'll stay within that range. As those of you listening have questions, please put them into the chat box, and at the end of all the presentations, we'll have a Q&A period. You may want to identify who or whom you want to address each question to. With that, we'll begin with our first presentation, which deals with electric choice. Jennifer Murphy, who is the field marketing manager for Clean Choice Energy, will be the presenter. She has been in that position since, I believe, 2018. I'll let you begin, Jennifer.
Hi there, everybody. So happy you could join, and thank you to CCWG for giving us this great platform. So happy to be here. Wanted to talk a little bit today about clean electric choice. I'm sure a lot of you out there have come up against, have seen this opportunity available and may have questions about it. So we're here to talk a little bit about how it works. So how does clean electricity work? We live in an area that has choice. Not everybody in the country does, but your utility, where you live, allows you to make the choice. So what does this mean? You can switch to clean electricity, have clean energy sourced through your utility company, and it's a very easy way to support the environment. When you choose clean electricity, you can sit back and enjoy the fact that you're greatly reducing your carbon footprint and environmental impact on our planet, helping you and your neighbors live healthier lives with cleaner air. So basically, you make a decision, you choose clean energy, it is sourced through your utility. Basically, that's it. You all breathe easier. So let's dig into a little bit more about really how it works. When you look at your utility bill, and then you have three sections. There's delivery, and delivery is provided by your utility company, and they basically set the rates and prices for you. If you want electricity, you have no choice. You pay what they ask. Same thing with taxes. Federal and local governments set your taxes. Again, no choice. But with supply, we can choose. And if you haven't made a choice yet, what we can tell you about choosing is this. You pay your utility every month to source your home energy supply, which is mostly generated from burning dirty fuels such as coal and oil. When you choose clean electricity, those same dollars go to purchase wind and solar instead. There are some other companies out there where maybe hydro is the only option. But and we'll talk a little bit later about how and who to choose. But you can choose to support renewable sources as opposed to polluting sources of electricity. Nothing changes about how you get your electricity. Your utility company still reads your meter. They still bill you. If there's a power outage, you still call them. They're in charge of the wires and the poles and the infrastructure, everything that they've done in the past. But we need to understand that they no longer generate electricity. They are just in charge of delivery. So nothing changes about how you get your electricity, just about the supply. And so it's a really easy way to have a positive impact and choose electricity that matches your values. So let's talk a little bit about what the electric grid is. And, you know, if you're like me, yeah, I walk into my room, I want to flip the switch, I just want electricity. I don't want to think about how it gets to me or all the multitude of processes that we go through to ensure that we have reliable electricity. But I did want to have a discussion about what is the grid? So electricity is generated in a power plant from fuel sources such as coal, oil, natural gas, nuclear energy, or it can be generated from renewable sources such as wind and solar farms, and they're all over the place. All electricity that's generated, no matter from where it's being generated, goes into these transmission lines. And I'm sure you've seen towers like these all over the place. This is what takes the electricity from where it's being generated and delivers it via transmission lines. Those transmission lines go directly to transformers that are in your utility. Transformers take that electricity and they kind of reduce it to, a level that is safe for travel. So it travels then from the utility, from the transformers at the utility through wires to your home. So it's basically taking those moving electrons, no matter how they're generated, and sourcing it to your home through this series of wires, poles, and transformers. And that's basically the grid. From generation sites through a series of transmission lines to transformers at the utility, through the wires to your home. And basically that makes up the grid. It's how we get electricity. So we're asking folks to think about, what does it mean to choose the source of how you get electricity? You can get clean, pollution-free energy with no change in your utility. As a matter of fact, if you want electricity from the grid, you can't change your utility. They're there to deliver it. There are no service interruptions. Nobody comes in. There's no installation project. There's no change in your electric liability. Don't be concerned about the utility looking upon you unfavorably because you're choosing renewables instead of, polluting sources of electricity. They deliver electricity to you in the same way they always have. The difference is, as a consumer, you will see a line item on your bill. Remember, there were 3 pieces to your bill. On the supply portion of your bill, you will see your new electric supplier, so that you will know that all the dollars you give to your utility to purchase supply for you will go to purchase renewable energy. It's basically the only difference. Kind of think of it like supporting the environment with your dollars as you make a decision to choose wind, solar, hydro over coal, oil, and nuclear energy. So once again, once you make a decision, all the electricity that you use in your home will be replenished in the grid with only renewables. So how, and this, we hear this all the time. So what is the cost factor? How much will I have to pay more? Will I, save money? So how you calculate the supply portion of your bill is by taking the amount of kilowatt hours that you use and timesing that by the rate that you are being charged, either through the utility or through your new supplier. So you take the usage and you times it by the rate that you're being charged, and that's how you get your electricity supply charge. Remember, this is not about your delivery charge or your taxes, though these 3 components of your bill come together to make the total that you pay every month. And with your utility, usage varies month to month, and that's based on how much power you use in kilowatt hours. So the household the household kWh used over the, over the month or the billing period, and whether your usage is actually measured or estimated, which you may know your utility can do at times. They'll do an estimation if they can't reach your meter. It's basically that. So what do you need to know when thinking about purchasing renewable energy? You need to know, how much do I use every month? And how much does it cost every month? You will then be able to calculate the difference in your supply charge. This calculation differs with other types of solar supply, like home PV panels, home solar systems that you may have on your roof. This is only for choosing a clean electricity supplier. And one of the easiest things we can do, I truly think, we can schlep our recyclables to the curb. I can bring my reusable bags to the supermarket. I can cut down on my use of plastic, and I can do this really simple, really easy. So I hope that through this, you've been able to understand a little bit more about how we get our electricity, how we can choose renewables over polluting sources of energy. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you very much, Jennifer. Our next speaker is Ryan Nicholson, and he's going to address the question of purchasing or renting solar panels. Ryan served in the military, then began his career with sustainable energy systems. First as an installer, worked himself up through the sales staff, and now is in sales management, where he focuses on development. He has managed more than 1,000 solar panel installations. And I might mention, Ryan will not be able to stay probably after 5:30, but has offered to answer any questions that you might send him if you direct questions to his email, and I'm sure he can give that to you. Ryan?
Thank you for that, John. Thank you everyone for joining, and thank you for putting this together and giving me the opportunity to speak about what I love most, which is what I do, which is helping homeowners convert their homes into small generating facilities where they can capture energy from an exploding ball of gas 93 million miles away and power their home. As you said, I started as an installer and then moved through sales, and then now work in the development side. It's a wonderful industry full of wonderful people, and thank you all for contributing to this. So the first thing I kind of want to talk about is the process by which a homeowner will go through in order to receive a quote or an understanding of what their home is capable of producing. You're going to see that there are a lot of options out there for you, starting first and foremost with a direct purchase. That's going to be using cash or your own secured financing to purchase it from an installer like myself or several others, to come out, assess your home for its viability. Hopefully, if you're dealing with a reputable installer, they're going to inform you of any limitations that your site might have, whether that's via shading, necessary electrical upgrades, things like that. Because not everything is it's not a one size fits all type approach. There's definitely a number of different things to consider when doing this. And as mentioned, there are other options, the third party options. People refer to it as renting or leasing, or a power purchase agreement. So I'm going to kind of go over all that. So what we do when we create a quote for you, or when any solar installer creates a quote for an interested party, is first we're going to evaluate the site. Obviously, where we're at, latitude, based on latitude and longitude here in the mid-Atlantic, the most favorable orientation for solar panels is going to be to the south. Now, that's not to indicate that if you have a 90 degrees east-facing roof, if that won't suffice, it will still work. But that would would have limitations, and it's important to set the expectations for what's achievable there. So we're going to look at the orientation, or the azimuth, if you will, of the direction that roof face or roof faces are oriented towards the south. We're going to look at the pitch assessment, that is to say, how steep, how shallow, because that plays a role in the racking choices that you're going to have. We're then going to use, and I would encourage any interested party who is thinking about going solar for their home and turning their home into that small generating facility, as I mentioned, to consider any shading that might be there. Obviously, objects that are taller than your roof, that are to the south of it, may run the risk of traversing at some point during the day and interrupting your ability to produce energy. That's going to factor into your return on your investment, because this is a hefty financial investment when we're talking about an upfront purchase. Though that cost can be great in some cases, the most cost-effective way over the long term would be to purchase it. If cash is an option, obviously that's not always an option for everybody. But even with a loan, low interest loan, home equity loan, things like that, that's going to allow you to get the highest rate of return through solar energy. And that's because of net metering, which I'll discuss as we go. So we're going to build in my case, and in many cases now, you're going to see a lot of installers are using 3D modeling with LiDAR. That is to say, lasers bouncing off satellite, or bouncing down on the ground from satellites that allow us to assess the height, density, and distance of objects relative to one another. So though we don't have to necessarily get on the roof day one to say, hey, this is what we think it's going to do, we can get pretty darn close. I would say within 85 to 90% accuracy. And in some cases, if the imagery is available and the LiDAR is up to date, we can get even more accurate than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to build that model. We're then going to place panels on there, string them together, which is the electrical process, if you will, where we connect each panel together. And then we're going to run production on how that's going to work, and use that assessment and present it to you based on a cost. Now, we're going to factor in the incentives available, which I believe was mentioned earlier, possibly before the team or the group really started. Those incentives are as of right now scheduled to go away on the federal level. We're looking at a step down from a 26% federal tax credit to a 22% federal tax credit. And at the end of next year, a 0% federal tax credit for a residential client and a 10% for a commercial client. So write your legislators. Those things are important if we want to see these things continue. So your salesperson will present to you a proposal to show you what's possible there. And that system can range on the smaller side from, I see now systems under $10,000, depending on the size of it, all the way up to, if you have a substantially large property and you're trying to develop a substantially large solar system or solar array to offset that energy. I mean, sky's the limit. However much is a worthy investment for you and your home, it's possible. So in that assessment, like I said, we're going to have 3D modeling, we're going to have LiDAR, we're going to have a relatively accurate, if not very accurate, assessment of how that's going to produce. And then we're going to present that to you. I would encourage anyone who's looking at this process to ask about the components being offered, because that does matter. I think you'll find that I don't believe anyone in this area is using any sub tier 1 panels or modules, as we call them. So that's good. But your inverter, that's going to be arguably the most important facet of your system, because it's handling the most amount of work, because solar panels are producing direct current. And we have to convert that to alternating current in the home so that you can use that. And that obviously requires some heavy lifting. So questions to ask would definitely be, hey, what panel are you offering me? But I wouldn't get too held up on the panels unless you're looking for the premium options, the top tier modules. I would definitely recommend just okay, do these panels come with a good warranty? You see them between 10 and 25 years. 10-year product warranty would probably be the lower tier cost, with the 25-year being a premium module, be it SunPower, REC, LG, Solaria, et cetera. With your inverter, most of your inverters now are what we would call optimized string inverters or microinverters. So solar panels operate like Christmas lights. If you break one bulb, they're all going to go out. But if you restore that bulb, they're all going to come back. So if ever you've dealt with LED Christmas lights, those don't do that, and that's because of a parallel operation as opposed to a serial operation. So we do recommend that you choose an inverter that is either a microinverter or a optimized string inverter, so that at any given time, should you have shading, as it traverses, it's only going to impact those specific panels. So you're going to have an electrical assessment involved with your home, because again, unlike the previous speaker, where it's coming through the grid no different than it currently is, this is actually tied in directly to your main service panel, so that as the sun is in the sky and you are using electricity in your home, you can legitimately stop and remind yourself that you're being powered by a star, which is the coolest part of my job. So what's going to happen is, as it's producing, it's going to flow through the circuits of your home first. So you're going to consume that power directly. Now, in the event that you are producing more than your site demands, you're going to export that back out to the grid for at least for now, a 1-for-1 credit. So for every 1 kilowatt hour you produce via solar and export back out to the grid, they're going to credit your bill in that monthly cycle, or build a bank of kilowatt hours rolling forward, that they will credit against your consumption that you have in the times where the solar is unavailable, nighttime, gray skies, and so that this way you are removing those demand charges and removing those delivery charges that you're associated with, at least for that aspect of your consumption. So this is just in general. When you purchase a system, like I said, you're either securing financing via the solar company you're working with, you're purchasing it using a home equity loan. You have the tax credit to consider this year and next year. And then in the state of Maryland, so long as you're not a historic property, you are going to get $1,000 grant. Now, it's a taxable grant. I feel that that's something that gets left off by salespeople a little too often, but that is a taxable grant to be considered. And that is for your primary residence as well. So it's not something you could use as an investment opportunity, though solar in general and the tax credit still available can certainly be used as an investment opportunity. And then additionally, Maryland is one of states that participate in what is called, or as a legislature, we have passed what's called a renewable portfolio standard, which sets a goal for solar generated or other sources, not just solar, but all renewable sources generated within the state. And they break it out into individual pie slices, if you will, where X amount of percentage needs to come from wind, other from biodegradables, other from solar. And it's essentially a game of supply and demand. They set what the demand is. And then once we reach that with supply, they weigh the value of that supply financially. So the utilities at large could pay a substantial portion of money if they don't encourage this, this transition. But that's to your advantage. So if you are considering purchasing solar, keep in mind that for now, Maryland is paying, I believe it's approximately, the top quote that I've seen right now is about $79 for every 1,000 kilowatt hours or 1 megawatt hour produced by solar. And that's irrespective of your consumption and your interactions with your utility. That is what we like to call icing on the cake. So though that is also intended to scale down over time, those solar renewable energy credits are handled by brokers. And you, as the consumer, do have choices and options as to who you work with and how those get managed. Some installers do try to aggregate those and manage them on your behalf. That's your choice. I won't go into my personal feelings on that. I would just say that that is an option for you as a consumer should you want. Now, other options for going solar other than cash purchase or financing is a third-party ownership, and that's a lease or a power purchase agreement. The lease and power purchase agreements are another company financing an installer to come in and build that for you, and then you're simply paying for the production. It's not owned by you. It's not, you're not eligible to take any incentives unless you have local incentives, which Frederick County does not currently. That would encourage you to do that. And so in the lease model, they prepare for you a flat rate so that you can budget for that. And then you see the savings in your electricity bill because obviously you're getting solar. So you're paying a cheaper rate for the energy produced via the solar array on top of your roof than you are for the electricity you would get straight from the grid. And then in the power purchase agreement, it's structured very similarly with ownership and who the incentives go to. However, you are paying per kilowatt hour, similar to what you do in our case here in Frederick County, Potomac Edison. You're just paying it to the entity that funded your installation. So the most notable name in that is Solar City, or now Tesla, though they've gone away from that. And I'd say companies like Sungevity, or not Sungevity, I'm sorry, that one is no longer. But Sunrun, I believe, is still the biggest in the market. I'm sure that that's likely to change at some point. Sonova is also making a lot of moves in Maryland, and those are the financiers that are backing these projects. You know, if you're a homeowner and you're looking to save $100 to $300 a year, depending on where you're at, then that's a great option. If cash is unavailable, you're not looking to have a line of credit, but you still want to have a direct impact on the nation and in the state or your county going solar. So I definitely don't discourage that. It's just so long as people understand there can be difficulties when transferring the lease or PPA should you want to sell your home. There's a lot to be considered there. But certainly not a bad idea by any means if you're interested in going solar. So just to kind of recap, you definitely want to have an informed solar salesperson that you're dealing with, because though it's becoming less and less as the industry proliferates, there's definitely a lot of people out there trying to take advantage of it. And I would just encourage you to do your homework, look for reputable installers and reputable sales teams. Because in some cases, a lot of sales teams aren't direct representatives of the installer themselves. They're their own company who's then subcontracting out that installation. Look at the different loan options available to you. Home equity loan is always going to be the best if you want to purchase solar directly. But every reputable installer should have access to one or more reputable financiers that deal specifically with solar. And then you have the third party option where it's no money out of pocket. You can either get the lease and have the fixed bill monthly that you pay for, or you can get the power purchase agreement and either way save money on your electricity bill. So with that, I guess I'll yield the floor and wait for any questions later. Thank you.
All right, Ryan, thank you very much. That was terrific. Our next topic is solar co-ops, and the person presenting that is Kimberly Armstrong, who is the program director of Solar United Neighbors, SUN for short. Kimberly has several years of experience as a sustainability advisor, author, and community advocate, and is long recognized nationally for her work on social justice and equality issues. She previously served at SUN as an advisory board member, and also in several community grassroots organizations, which provide her with unique integrated perspective. She enjoys spending time with her immediate family and traveling. And at this point, Kimberly, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. That was a very good detailed presentation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the co-ops, but I'm going to leave a lot more of the information for the breakout room if people have, specific questions or want to know a little bit more. So let me share my screen. So Solar United Neighbors was started back in 2007 by Anya Skolman, and she's the one that's holding this sign up. And her and her son were inspired by the movie An Inconvenient Truth. I don't know if you all have seen it with Al Gore in it. And Anya got started as just like a uninformed person in DC trying to go solar. And as Ryan stated, and Joanne stated as well, is that solar can be very complicated. And I can just tell from my personal experience, I have solar and I live in Baltimore City, and I work in the industry, and it continues to be, complicated. So with that being said, her son thought it would be a good idea to, have a community project for his school. And so they decided, well, why don't we try to take people, as a group to go solar? Because her thought process was kind of like bulk purchasing. So say like when you go to Costco's or you go to Sam's Clubs or BJ's, you get a reduction in the price of the product because you're buying it in a bulk. And so now that's grown into 12 states, with Maryland being one of them. So what we do is we really work on joining people together to go solar and fighting for their energy rights. And when we talk about fighting for the energy rights, we also do some advocacy around policy work, around solar, things like net metering, zoning amendments, things of that nature, to try and make it easier for people to go solar. Or even for a lot of legislatures, they make these policies and things, but sometimes they don't always really understand what it is that the consumer really needs in order to get renewable energy or clean energy. And so, as I stated, we want to address barriers with group prices. And so one of the things that we do is that Ryan made this point too, is we want to help consumers to make an informed decision. So when we do the co-ops, it's usually between 8 and 9 months long. And towards the middle of the co-op, we'll say to the co-op members, we're going to send out an RFP. The RFP goes out to installers. They send us their bids back. And then we have a spreadsheet that we go through, which talks about the types of panels, the equipment, the warranties. We make sure that everyone is licensed and bonded. So we take a lot of the work for the individual to do it themselves, because like I stated and Ryan stated as well, you can have salespeople that can get very salesy and not always tell you everything, or you may not always know the right questions to answer to go solar. So we want to just help you to streamline the process. And we also work with not just homeowners, but businesses, farms, and other nonprofits as well. And once you become a member of the co-op, one of the things we look at, Ryan also talked about this. So Ryan, you talked about a lot of stuff that I'm already talking about. We look at your roof. So we just take an aerial assessment of your roof to see if you're a good fit, because it doesn't make sense to go through this whole process and then you find out, well, I can't even get solar. So if your roof is not facing due south or north or east where you can get the most sun, or if you have a lot of trees and shading, and we also look at, do you have enough roof space? Now, we just closed the co-op in Montgomery County, and in Montgomery County, they've had some changes with roof setbacks. So people may not be able to get as much solar on their roof as they thought, because the rules have changed. And so those are some of the things we also do, is keep up with legislation and policy, because it can be overwhelming and complicated So also in Montgomery County, depending on where you live at, and I'm going to talk about Frederick. I know there's areas in Frederick that may have a lot of trees. So if you live in an area that's very woodsy and has a lot of trees, it may not be possible for you to get rooftop solar. However, you may be able to get community solar, which I know that I think Gary is going to talk about community solar, which also is another passion of mine around community solar, and how even though you may not be able to get rooftop solar, you may still be able to buy into the clean energy and renewable energy in a different format. So these are some of the things, people may ask, well, what do I need to do? You're doing it right now by being an informed consumer, learning about solar. There's no obligation for you to become a member of our co-op. It's more, we do a lot of the community outreach and consumer education. We want you to spread the word, stay informed. We have a lot of people in the co-op that are just as knowledgeable and help us to stay informed around some of these issues as well. And like I stated before, the RFP phase of it, we don't make anybody become a part of the selection committee. We just help them to make an informed decision. We want you to be ready for your site visit, as Ryan also talked about in your proposal. We'll also help if co-op members are interested and say they get an outside bid from somewhere else, but maybe they are not a co-op member yet. They may ask us, will you, at least look at these proposals to help us to make an informed decision. And then, as I stated, we also help people just, fight for your energy rights, because I think that clean energy is, I'm not going to say everybody, but we would all like for everybody to have clean energy. And I'm very passionate about this because I not just do what I love, but I got into it around environmental justice, my environmental justice concerns, because I have asthma. And I started thinking, like, I was acquired asthma. I was never born with asthma. So I was thinking about, from a health perspective, what is it that I could do to help engage my community and inform them about renewable energy and solar. And I'll go into this a little bit more in the breakout session and break it down. Our last co-op in Montgomery County, we did EV charging, and I talked about the bulk purchasing. And I believe when I've been in this position for about 6 months, and I understand that Frederick County did have a co-op back in 2016. And I believe this year they were thinking about doing a co-op between Frederick County, Martinsburg, West Virginia, and Hagerstown. So I don't want to, people to think that, Frederick County is being excluded, because we are looking to do co-ops. I would like to do co-ops anyway, all over the state of Maryland. So if anyone has any more questions or anything, I'll be glad to answer them in the breakout session. And this is just my contact information, and thank you very much.
Kimberly, thank you very much. That was very helpful. Moving to our next presentation on community solar that Kimberly mentioned, Gary Skolnick is the CEO of Neighborhood Sun. He's been a climate activist in Maryland for about 20 years, both as an entrepreneur and an advocate. He's crafted and passed clean energy legislation and helped thousands of households and businesses switch to renewable sources of energy. Prior to founding his current company, Gary co-founded and ran Clean Currents, which was the state's first exclusively green energy company. Gary lives in Silver Spring. Gary, take it away.
All right, thank you, John. And thank you everybody for joining this call on a Sunday afternoon. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So I'm going to be talking about community solar, which is another way that you can access clean energy and support new solar. A little bit about my background. John already did the introduction, but I started out at Greenpeace in the year 2000, And, you know, we were doing a lot of work around the world on clean energy, and I was wondering what was happening here in Maryland. And to my surprise, there was not that much at the time. But joining forces with people like Mike Tidwell at CCAN and Sierra Club, we were able to pass quite a bit of legislation. And now I'm very happy to say that Maryland is a leader. And all these great solar efforts are really a result of people like yourselves helping to push the legislature to be a far more progressive group than it had been in the past. So what is community solar and why does it matter? Oops, sorry, let me just go back screen. Well, first of all, the biggest thing is looking at the greenhouse gas emissions by sector. And we see that electricity use is about a third of our greenhouse gases, but transportation is 34%, so that's slightly higher. But thanks to the great work of a lot of folks, electric vehicles are becoming more and more prominent. And we expect our transportation sector to be a lot more electric than gas as we go forward. So it's more important than ever to green up our electricity grid by switching to clean energy sources. So about 80% of the market actually can't install rooftop solar. As Ryan and Kimberly talked about, people with shaded roofs or the roof faces the wrong way. If you're a renter or you are living in a condo, or if you don't have the money for an upfront payment and you don't want to do a loan and you don't really like the lease option, there's all kinds of reasons why people can't do rooftop solar. So we, in 2015, along with Earth Justice, CCAN, Sierra Club, passed the Maryland Community Solar Law, which allowed for the first time virtual net metering. And that opens up the benefits of solar to the entire market, basically. I mean, it opens it up to anybody who's paying an electric bill. The Maryland Public Service Commission took a couple years to do the regulations, and they launched it in 2017. And now everyone can participate in the green energy revolution. So how does it actually work? So the way community solar works is you get a share of a large commercial project. This is an example from our project, the Panorama Landfill Project, which is a 6.6 megawatt project in Prince George's County with 1,100 households that are part of it. So you could see like the Skolnicks, like we have a small share, Martinez, Hansley, everybody has a share. So when you sign up for community solar, you're signing up to have a portion of that project go towards you. Now, I'm not saying you're not actually getting the electricity. It doesn't travel on the wires from the solar farm to your house. But every month when that project produces power, the utility puts a credit on your bill equal to the size of your share. So if you have a share that's matching 100% of your bill, let's say, then your solar credits would match 100% of your bill. And it works essentially the same as if you had a rooftop system. So in some of these examples I'm going to go through, I'll be talking about how we do it at Neighborhood Sun, but there are many companies that offer community solar in the state of Maryland. This just happens to be my experience. I know best from what we do. And I'm sure that this model is actually similar for many companies as well. It's free to switch. There's no money up front. There's no installation of equipment. And as Jennifer said, with switching to clean energy, it's the same dependability of power. The utility is still responsible for keeping your power on. One of the things that's great about community solar is that the rates are lower than the utility. Because we're building, companies are building solar at scale, they're actually able to offer discounts to the utility, which is a little different than most of us have been our experience in clean energy. And that's one of the things I love about community solar so much, is that it's able to save people money, and it's able to help you fight climate change, but also supporting local power. Every project has to be in your utility area. So you're not buying from a wind farm in Texas, you're buying from a solar facility just down the road. Most offers are a guaranteed discount. There are some that you have to watch out for. It's one of the things to look for. Some of them don't have a guaranteed discount. They have a fixed rate that starts at a discount and often has an escalator to it each year. So that could be okay for some people, but some projects offer guaranteed discounts. And for all projects, it takes only a few minutes to switch. And most of them at this point now allow you to cancel as well with no fees. That was actually different when the community solar market first opened in Maryland. There were pretty high cancellation fees, but now it's gotten to the no cancellation fee, which is great. Every household can go solar. We have a program, we call it SHARE. Solar helps advance resident equality, but one of the hallmarks of the Maryland system is that it has a very strong incentive for solar developers to offer solar shares to low and moderate income Marylanders, which to me is incredible, because everybody needs to be part of the solution, and we can't just have it being the people who have the money to do so. So the Maryland program encourages offers to low and moderate income people. Often it's a steeper discount than the rest of the market. And the way it's set up in Maryland, it's called open. So you're either open or you're a lower moderate income. So for the open customers, for example, in our project, and other companies have this too, we have a 20% discount for the low and moderate income people and a 10% discount for all other households. And I think that's really fair. The people who are in the low and moderate income category need the money the most, and our communities of color and lower income communities are most impacted by, frankly, the environmental racism we've had in the past, where power plants get put right next to those communities. So it's only fair that they get the best discount from clean energy. So we call Potomac Edison First Energy PEFE, but because Potomac Edison First Energy is a mouthful to say. So this is just an example of our terms. Again, other companies are very similar. Guaranteed 20% discount off the solar credits. It's portable, meaning that if you move from one house to another, you could take the contract with you. You can cancel anytime with no fees. There's no credit check for low and moderate income folks. And the discount is up to 20 years. So you get the guaranteed savings for 20 years without having to commit to 20 years. You can cancel at any time. And it's tailored to your electricity usage, meaning somebody who uses 20,000 kilowatt hours a year is going to get a share that meets that size. Somebody in a small apartment who uses 3,000 kilowatt hours a year will get a share to match that size. For all other households, it's basically the same, except you have a 10% discount. So I wanted to give a sample bill in Potomac Edison, and I'm sorry, it might be a little hard for folks to read. But one of the things about the community solar program in Maryland is that each utility can choose how it wants to distribute the solar credits that you get on your bill. So I'm assuming, since you guys are Frederick, most of you are probably Potomac Edison. So the way they do it is a kilowatt hour credit. So if your share, in this case, produces 742 kilowatt hours, then you're getting a credit against the kilowatt hours that you used from the grid. So in this example, you used 1,267 kilowatt hours from the grid, but Potomac Edison is only billing you for 525. Okay, so that is directly reducing your bill. And what that means is that every kilowatt hour charge, so that includes the supply charge, it includes distribution, it includes taxes. Every kilowatt hour charge on your bill gets reduced. And then the way we charge you is we take the value of that credit and we would charge you 10 or 20% less than that. And that's how all community solar companies do it. We have to do a calculation of how much are those 742 kilowatt hours worth. Whatever it was worth, let's say $100, we would bill you $90 or $80. And that's how you're saving money. Another thing about the billing that's kind of cool, as I get this up, is that the credits. So, okay, I should step back a sec. One of the things about community solar is that you are signing up for something that is not yet built in almost every case, which for those of us in the climate change field, we know that additionality is a really important metric. So by signing up for something that's not yet built, you are helping to get something new built, which is directly reducing greenhouse gas. And I should say, even though this is a climate group, local air pollution. So nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, mercury, all of that also gets reduced. So typically when you sign up, it could be anywhere from 3 months up to even a year before the project is built, depending on how things go. But once the project goes online, let's say in this example, it's in June, it produces power for a month. Your first full month of solar, PEFE, Potomac Edison First Energy, issues credits on your first bill. Then you get a second month of solar and Potomac Edison issues you credits on your next bill. And then we bill you. And this works for all the other companies as well. So you actually get a kind of a 2-month head start where you're getting credits on your bill before you actually pay your first community solar bill. So it's another nice thing. So even if you're saving, let's say 10% on your bills, you're actually, from a cash flow perspective, you're actually doing even better because you're getting 2 months worth of credits before you pay your first bill. And then and so on and so on. So then your third month, you get more solar, you get more credits, and then you get your second month bill. This is just what our invoice looks like. So we're going to show you, this is a Pepco example. Now Pepco, if there's anybody out here, Pepco is a lot easier than Potomac Edison because they give you $1 credit on your bill. So it's much easier for us. So we know in this example, Pepco gave you $119.76 on your bill. We bill you $107.78. So you're saving $11.98. And that is it. I will be available for questions in the breakout session. Thank you, everybody.
Gary, thank you very much. Our last and final presentation was going to be on community aggregation. Lorig Charkoudian is the state delegate to the Maryland General Assembly representing District 20, where she serves on the Economic Matters Committee. She's a strong advocate for legislation promoting environmental justice, consumer protections, economic justice, criminal justice reform, and a sustainable food system. Over the last 2 sessions, she's been active in supporting her own community choice energy bill. In addition to a role as a delegate, she is the executive director of Community Mediation Maryland. She received her PhD from Johns Hopkins University in economics. And for the last 3 years for 3 times has been designated to be among Maryland's top 100 women by the Maryland Daily Record. She lives in Tacoma Park with her 2 children, Aline and Rafi, and runs ultra marathons. So I'm ultra impressed, and I think you will be too with Lorig.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to the working group for inviting me to be part of this. And it's been so much fun to check off all of the previous speakers, as I have had solar panels on my roof for about 12 years now. And I have Clean Choice Energy as my supplier. And I have a subscription to Neighborhood Sun as my community solar, and just added geothermal so that my energy usage is lower, and I'm trying to get completely off of natural gas. I'll let you know when I get there. I got to get rid of my stove, and then I'll be there. So it's great, and so you can have all of the above is the short answer on that one. Okay, so I'm going to talk about, I'm just going to try to share my screen here. Hopefully I share the correct screen, right? That's always the thing when you're doing this. Okay, is everyone looking at something that says Community Choice Energy? Delegate Lorig, Charkoudian, fantastic. Okay, so let's see how I want to make sure that oops, I just got to figure out how to advance the screen here. Sorry about this. Let's see. Well, my apologies. I thought we had figured this out. Are you okay? Now, there we go. Okay. So Community Choice Energy is tool for local government to fight climate change by maximizing renewable energy at the lowest possible price. So as I understand it, the working group has asked me to present today. What I'm presenting is a little bit different from what you've heard so far, because it's not something that you can choose right now, because first we have to pass the legislation. And the legislation that we're looking at for this year is actually a pilot project that would be in Montgomery County, because Montgomery County has expressed the most interest in moving forward with Community Choice Energy. But as I understand it, the working group is interested in, has recommended that Frederick sort of continue to monitor this pilot project and potentially look in the future for Frederick to either engage it, as a pilot as well, and or Frederick to be part of a coalition that might just expand past pilots so that we could have this across the entire state. So basically, the way that our current structure works is that if you do nothing, you are getting your energy from standard offer service, which is Potomac Edison or Pepco or whoever it is. And that's where most people are. Standard offer service is, you're going to be getting most of your energy right now, roughly 74% of it, 73% of it maybe is going to be dirty energy. And then whatever the state's requirement on renewable energy is going to be, so 25% roughly. Eventually it'll get up to 50% of renewable, unless you opt into a third-party supplier. So today you heard about Clean Choice Energy. There's a lot of other third-party suppliers. There are third-party suppliers that are clean energy and others that are just something else, some other mix. But that's sort of the way that it currently works. The idea behind Community Choice Energy is that with a CCA, if you have a county, usually sometimes a municipality, who develops a CCA, then everybody is automatically in that default CCA unless they choose out of it. So you still have choice, except the default is now a democratically controlled supplier of energy. So what that means is your default becomes Montgomery County, Frederick City, Tacoma Park, whoever manages that CCA. And that is a body that is elected by the people. And so a lot of times folks talk about CCA as energy democracy. So it's an opt-out model. And the reason that's important, I'll talk about in a moment, is related to the ability to then negotiate for the lowest possible prices for clean energy. So in a CCA, you have everybody is automatically in the CCA unless they opt out. And then the choices they have to opt out to are either going back to the SOS, the default, whatever it is Pepco's providing or Potomac Edison is providing, They still have the choice to go to a third-party supplier if they choose. And then within the CCA, some CCAs are 100% renewable and others might be 75% renewable with an option to opt up to 100% renewable. So the way that it works, and I think we've had a similar model to this, because sometimes it gets confusing. We know we turn on our lights and electricity comes on, and we know that there's a turbine somewhere and a solar panel somewhere, but like how it connects is sometimes a question mark. So again, with a community choice aggregator, you would still have Potomac Edison managing the lines that bring the electricity to your house. But instead of Potomac Edison buying the energy in an SOS market, again, the vast majority of which right now would be dirty energy, it would be the community choice aggregator, the county or the municipality, that would be making the choices about where that energy is coming from. So they could either work with Clean Choice, for example, or another third-party supplier to purchase that clean energy, or they also could own their own generation. So they could own their own solar, own their own wind, develop long-term contracts, PPAs with offshore wind that's newly developing, PPAs with storage. So it really has the ability to have this additive effect. Sorry, one more thing I wanted to say about this. One of the things that I will mention, let me just back up to this, is that we have written our CCA legislation so that it is community solar still can be part of that mix. Of course, if you've already selected a third-party supplier that you like, you would stay with that third-party supplier. But I will say that in a lot of states, there is a partnership in New York State, for example, between the CCA and community solar, and finding ways for the CCA to really support more of a partnership and more of a connection to community solar. So the CCA kind of gives you that energy democracy piece, but really ends up working with a lot of the players that we're talking about already. The other thing about the CCA, and we've made this explicit in the bill as well, is that anyone who has rooftop solar or any sort of net metering arrangement, none of that would change for those individuals who are currently, whatever the revenue sources are that's supporting their ability to have the solar on their roof or their community solar, wouldn't change. So the process is, first we've got to pass legislation. Now I will tell you, in case, I think some of you potentially have worked on this with me, and others probably know from your Annapolis battles on net metering and community solar and other things, that passing this legislation brings out a significant amount of opposition from the utilities, who have quite a bit of influence in Annapolis. So the first step is to pass the legislation, and we got very close last year, and then because of COVID, we weren't able to get it through. We ended early because of COVID, but we think that we'll be able to get it through this year. We welcome participation if y'all are interested in that. The next step would be that the local government will pass an ordinance. So then this is where the democratic process comes in. So this is where folks who are involved at a local level have a chance to advocate with the county council, city council, to highlight, what is most important to this community. So for example, maybe generating as much of the energy as possible locally is particularly important to a community, or generating energy locally with union jobs might be particularly important, or getting the lowest possible price might be particularly important. So there's always potentially some trade-offs and some priorities, but the idea is that rather than a utility that is primarily answerable to shareholders and then answerable to state regulators only, that this process is one that is still regulated by the Public Service Commission, but really is answerable to the people. And that's really the energy democracy piece of this. So it's an opt-out program, and we've talked a little bit about some of these other pieces. The IOU, I don't know if I've defined that yet. That's the investor-owned utility. So that's the Potomac Edison for you all. The customers would continue to pay their bills and receive their power through their utilities, but the governing and the managing is through the county. And then I think this is a really important piece, is that the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, which in our case is the Public Service Commission, still has a really significant role in regulating the way that the CCA functions. So some of the benefits across the country, there are, because there's been a couple new ones now, I think maybe 13 states, maybe more than that. And so we have a chance to really look at both California, which is a slightly different structure in terms of their energy markets, but also several states on the Northeast. And depending on the models that are used, the electric rates generally produce savings. And sometimes the amount of savings tends to be tied to the amount of renewable energy. So, there are some CCAs that sort of prioritize getting as close to 100%, and some that have gotten to 100% as possible, but maybe they have a rate that's very similar to the SOS, the standard investor-owned utility. Whereas others might say, well, part of our goal is to reduce rates for people as well. So we'll get a 10% reduction, but we'll still have, 75% renewable compared to the utility that has 25% renewable. So that's this sort of balancing act. And then the economic development piece of it, as time goes by, and this really gets to this next piece, the very simple version of a CCA is to do power purchase agreements or short-term contracts with another provider. And so even if you just do sort of the CCA 1.0, you have a chance to really make a difference in terms of the amount of renewable energy folks are getting, and you have a chance to make a difference in terms of the rates that folks are paying and reduce those rates. Sort of CCA 2.0, after a few years, have the ability to add, and this is again where some of the creative policy making comes in, add energy efficiency, demand response and incentives, add incentives that are tied to growing the EV infrastructure. And then with additional time, and this is the economic development piece of it, really build out their own generation. So building out either local power in terms of community solar and storage, transportation electrification, we've talked about, microgrids, and so on. And so, for example, right now there's conversations about some of these coal plants that are closing down, one in the Dickerson area of northwest Montgomery County. And there's this hope that would shift from being a coal plant to solar and storage, right? So it's this massive 560 megawatt interconnection agreement with PJM. And so the possibility of transitioning that to solar and storage is great. And if you had a CCA, the CCA could commit to be an off-taker of a large amount of that, and that could then incentivize and make it more likely that they move from a coal plant to solar and storage as opposed to a coal plant to a natural gas plant, which is the transition that's happening in a lot of places as coal plants are closing down. So this is a map of all the both where the states that have it and then the ones that are investigating it, and so there we are. Maryland is actively investigating. But I do like to show this map because I think, a lot of times we show up with our progressive energy policy and people are like, what do you, like, who else does that? California and Massachusetts. And you actually have a really interesting mix of states here that are doing it, not just necessarily the ones they're always leaders on progressive energy legislation. And so I think that's worth seeing. Whoops. Oh, that might be the end, or I might just have lost my ability to share my screen. Okay, sorry. Let's see if I can unshare my screen now. Thank you for your patience with this. How does one stop sharing their screen?
Lorig, if you go to the top of your screen, there should be a...
Oh, there it is. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm really good at energy policy, technology, not so much. So where we are right now is that we did manage to get, as I said, the bill through as a pilot project for Montgomery County, and the we got that out of the House. We didn't get it out of the Senate, but based on the progress we made, we're hopeful that if we work hard over the next session, we'll be able to do that. And I'm happy to answer any questions, you know, from the working group about, you know, what would it look like if you eventually added Frederick as a pilot, what you might want to see. We do have a lot of questions that are getting answered in a work group within the way that we've structured the pilot, so that we can answer questions about the impact on local renewable growth, the impact on local economic development, the impact on ratepayers, the impact on ratepayers who are not in the CCA. There have been some concern about, like, if you take, you know, sort of half of PEPCO's territory out of PEPCO, what happens to everybody else? There's lots of reasons to believe that nothing will change for them. But those are some of the things that the pilot will look at. And I'll stop there and look forward to questions later.
All right, well, thank you very much, Lorig. At this point, I'll ask Jane and Joanne if I should just go right into the Q&As. Well, I'll just go right into
Yeah, why don't you do that,
Yes.
John? Would that be-
Yes.
All right, that's good. One of our presenters, Ryan, needs to run fairly soon, so I may direct some of the first questions at him that have come in. I think I've got 3 for you here, Ryan. One is, can you say a little bit more about the different impacts on a house sale from leasing versus purchasing PPAs?
Sure. So when you purchase that, then the transfer is obviously pretty easy. You're going to sell your home, and in most cases at a higher value, or at least considering the value of the solar based on the age of the system, quality of the system at that time. There's definitely still a gap, I would say, in information on the real estate side of things to the solar industry side of things. And so, I mean, I know most people, I know I do, and my team does, always offer, hey, if you're going to sell your home and you got your system from us, go ahead and reach out. We'll answer any questions, so that prospective buyers understand what that system's going to do, what the impact is for them. When you have a lease and power purchase agreement arrangement and you're trying to sell your home, there can be complications with the credit qualification, I've found. So they all present themselves as being simple transfer, and assuming that the buyer has the credit worthiness to both take out a large loan to purchase a home and then also turn around and qualify for the power purchase agreement or lease, which in some cases, and I believe they've gotten better about it, but in some cases they do have different credit requirements than for transfer than they do for the initial qualification, with the transfer requirements being a little bit more stringent than the ones who initially purchased it. But it's a matter of paperwork. It's a matter of just due diligence and making sure that you're informed and reading the contract terms of that power purchase agreement or lease. And then from an ownership perspective, whether it's a loan or a straight cash purchase, that's significantly easier. You can contact your installer about transferring the monitoring service that comes with universally all solar arrays that you purchase today. And so that the new homeowner can monitor the system no different than you. If you wish to do the SREC transfer, I mean, that's another kind of gray area that needs to be considered. I have seen some folks who sell the home but keep the SRECs. Whether there's legality in or not, we should talk to the lawyers on here. But that is something to consider. But in most cases, if you're buying a home with solar already on it, give a local installer a call, or the original installer, and they should be able to give you some good information on the age of the system, value of the system, things like that.
Great. Another more basic question is how does the electricity somebody produces from the panels on their home actually come directly to them?
So when you have panels on top of your home, it's going to go down, whether it's microinverters or standard inverter, it's going to come down the roof and hit some sort of inverter or combiner box, and it's then going to feed directly into your main service panel. either via a breaker, no different than the rest, or what's called a line side tap, where we're actually kind of clamping on to the incoming wires that are provided by the utility. So that is to say that when you're producing electricity, it's actually flowing through the circuits of your home at that time. So once, and then the grid is providing balance so that at all times you're not underpowering anything there or overpowering it, because that could lead to some undesired consequences. So the grid provides the stability, the solar supplements that, and throughout the year, your production will fluctuate. You'll have less production this time of year and through the winter. And then the summertime, you might be producing a substantial more than what you're consuming. And that's where that bank of credits happens and net metering takes over.
Great. And the final question is what's maybe the average size of a normal solar arrangement on a house, and maybe the upper and lower range, and what might in general someone expect to pay?
That's a great question. So in this area in Frederick County, we obviously are a little more spread out than some of our neighboring counties, at least in the county at large. And then obviously in the city, we're a little more condensed. I would say your average system size out here is between a 5 and 8 kW. That is to say a 5,000 watt system or an 8,000 watt system. Though I would say it's skewed by the fact that we have large agricultural areas and in some cases some very large homes, but that tends to be what you get on average in most locations. Your prices are going to vary. I can only speak to what our company does, and it could be on the lower side of $14,500 up to about $21,000, $22,000 depending, and that's not including batteries. It's important to state that a battery is a separate cost and though not a separate operation. That's just for the photovoltaic array installation. Almost everyone you're dealing with here will be turnkey, so you shouldn't be having to go secure permits or anything like that for yourself. And that's all included, but prices continue to come down, assuming that we don't get more tariffs.
Great, thank you very much. That was very helpful. I'm just going to throw out questions in no particular order. Jennifer, the one question that came up is someone asked if you could explain how electricity customers can evaluate renewable energy providers by clicking on the Shop for Electricity button on the Maryland Public Service Commission website.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we always want to evaluate and, be the perfect consumer. So look at the company that, we are purchasing from is very important. The PSC has great records of who to purchase from, but they don't give much in the way of information that you need to determine. So there are lots of reasons why we purchase electricity, renewable or not. What is the percentage of renewable energy that you're getting? How does this company stand up against other companies? How does the price stand up against other pricing of other companies? So, we advise consumers, and I'm going to go through this a little bit later in a workshop, how to choose the best supplier. Right now, I can say that the great thing about the question is that, yes, if you see a supplier on your local utilities website, then they have been vetted and are approved.
Great, great. There was one other question for you, and that was basically if you could clarify which sort of options are available to Frederick County only and which are available to the whole state.
Yeah, so everybody who pays a utility bill in your name, you are eligible for the program. So there are no restrictions, no further requirements. as long as you pay a utility bill in your name or your spouse's name, you can choose clean electricity and you can choose clean choice.
Great. Thank you. Kimberly, question for you. Is solar co-op a lower cost than going it alone?
Yeah, so the
I guess
reason,
that also applies to SRECs and net metering for co-ops.
yes, so one of the reasons why we do the RFPs, because we look at all the pricings as well. So when we do the spreadsheet, we'll say to the installers, like, okay, we're bringing you 20 people or 30 people or more. What's your best price? So we try to get the best pricing, and we develop our spreadsheet. We look at the base price, but also the premium prices as well. Now, for the solar RECs, it would depend on your financing. If you finance it on your own, as Ryan was talking about, then you qualify to get your own SRECs. But if you lease it or you have a PPA, then whoever the developer is or whoever is doing your solar array or the PPA is through, they get the solar RECs. So it just depends on how you choose to finance.
Right. Okay, good.
John, I'm sorry. Could I
Sure.
add to that? I actually,
That's right.
so yeah, on top of everything Kimberly just said, having bid on several of those co-ops before, what those co-ops really do for a client is they take away a company's need for lead acquisition costs, which is a soft cost, which is a very high cost, and it brings that down. So when I or another installer prepare a bid, we're saying, hey, they did the hard work for us. They're bringing us interested parties and they're saving us money. So let's pass that savings on to people. Sorry to interrupt. I just thought that was important.
No problem.
That's
I'm going to give you a perfect example. I just talked about the Montgomery County Co-op. We had 202 members come through just this co-op, and we have almost 70 signed contracts. So that's 70 contracts that the installer didn't have to do hardly any work other than just bid, and we help to facilitate it. Even going through the process, we help facilitate going through the process, making sure everything is going smoothly. If anyone is having any hiccups, we try to address those concerns as well with the installer.
Thank you both, Kimberly and Ryan. That's a really important point, I think. Well, one questioner asked to make sure that they had everyone's all the presenters' contact information, and I think Joanne, you posted something on the chat where you can get copies of the handouts. Is that correct? Oh, that's good. Okay.
Yes.
We got a thumbs up on that.
In short, yeah. Yeah, so the handout has got some of these definitions of some of these terms, about SRECs and net metering and that kind of thing. And also some diagrams of, what solar looks like in your house and the different components and so forth.
Right. Great. Okay, thank you. Another question for Kimberly was, what are some of the limitations of co-ops? Or, are there people for maybe it's not a good solution? And do you have any idea when Frederick County might again have a co-op? And finally, can residents of the county participate in co-ops in other counties?
Well, give you a perfect example. I'm working on doing another co-op. I'm calling it the Northern Maryland County Co-op, and I guess the limitation is bandwidth. Like, we just don't have the capacity to go all over the state all at one time. So that's why we do it by different counties. However, if if Frederick County is looking to do a co-op, that's something that we can discuss, and see how we can make it work. Because the limitation, I guess you could say, is just manpower, and everybody can't get rooftop solar. So even though we talk a lot about the rooftop solar, a lot of people can't get rooftop solar, and they get very frustrated sometimes. So that's why we have also on our platform a platform for community solar, where we also have Gary's neighborhood sun on it, where you can go on to our platform and look at the different subscriptions that you can provide or sign up for.
All right, very good. A question both for Gary and Kimberly was someone who lives in a dense community with HOA regs, how might they be affected if they're interested in a co-op in a community system?
Well, with the co-op for homeowners associations,
Right.
by law, people can't stop you from getting solar. However, some homeowners associations can be a bit challenging sometimes. So we try to help them to facilitate that conversation. So we sometimes go up against, homeowners associations, and, they have all this stuff that they come up with. And so we just tell them the law, show them the law. And that goes back to when we talked about helping people to fight for their energy rights. In the state of Maryland, you cannot deny people or stop people from getting solar. However, if you don't know the law and if you don't know how to really finesse or talk to some of these homeowners associations, then it just makes it very frustrating.
Good point. Someone obviously from outside Gary.
John, I was just gonna
Sure.
add on that. So that question is, anybody who pays an electric bill can sign up for community solar. So it doesn't matter if you live in an HOA or not.
Great, great. Someone asked where they could find information about community solar in Virginia, and specifically in the area served by Dominion Energy.
Yeah, so Virginia actually just passed legislation, and we were very excited about it, except so far in the regulations, it looks like Dominion's trying to water it down. But I guess the best way to keep up to date is to go to MDVCA, which is the Maryland, DC, Virginia Solar Energy Industries Association. They're very involved. CCAN is very involved. And I'm sure there's others I'm leaving out, but us at Neighborhood Sun, we of course are very interested in Virginia. We think it's probably still about 2 to 3 years away before there will be actual a program up and running there.
Someone also asked Gary where the next project is being built.
So we've got we've got two in Potomac Edison. One is full, and the other one is being built in a town called Flintstone. It's out in Western Maryland, and it's about half full right now. And then there's projects all over the state.
Great, great. I'm going to jump around a little bit. Let's see. Someone just thanked everyone for the very informative and well-presented presentations. And let's see, we answered the availability of the presentations as Joanne posted them. Well, Gary, as long as you're on here, someone's asked, what are the limitations of community solar? And in what ways might different community solar companies differ?
Yeah, that's a great question. The limitations are currently, I'd say the biggest obstacle for people is you do have to pay, most of the time you have to pay 2 bills. So we can't put our charges on the utility bill, so you have to pay us separately. There are some companies that do take over your electric bill, and then you only have to pay 1 bill, but the downside there is you're giving up control of your electric bill. The other difference is between companies, some of us are local, some are coming from out of state, some of us are B Corps or B corporations, some of the companies are not. I think though, as a consumer, what you're most interested in is you need to have transparency and an understanding of how your bill works, and if there's any problems, who you can call, and make sure it's not some 800 number or something that people aren't answering, because we have found that the utilities, of course, big shocker, don't always do things correctly. And so it's important to have good communication with your community solar company. So if the utility puts the wrong credits on your bill, things like that, it can be easily corrected.
Well, someone is also, how does a consumer really know if the billing is correct?
So for all community solar companies, well, for the ones where you have two bills, you're going to see the credits on your electric bill, and then you're going to see an invoice against that, and the two should match up. So if they don't match up, then that's a problem. If you're getting an invoice for something and you don't see that on your bill, that's an issue. But remember, there's often a 2-month lag. So credits that are produced in October, you're not going to get a bill until December or January. So you got to compare your January bill that you get to the credits you received in October. And we've had to do this with several customers because it's a little counterintuitive. You're getting a bill, but it's for credits from 2 months ago.
Terrific.
John, quick question for Gary. You should explain what a B Corp was, because not everybody's going to know what a B Corp is.
So a B Corp is a company that is used for the good of society. And from my perspective as an activist, it's using a business to affect positive change. So B Corps are held to a higher standard than typical businesses. You have to get assessed every 2 years by the nonprofit B Lab. They do an audit, and you commit to certain levels of transparency, of good governance, of community involvement, of environmental progress, and a variety of things. So it's sort of a hybrid between a for-profit and a nonprofit. You're not just out there trying to make money. You're trying to have a positive impact.
Very good. Lorig, a question for you. What is the prospective timeline to come online?
I will say the other benefit to having a small community solar company where they'll pick up the phone and talk to you is that Gary can then call your state legislator and have them put pressure on the utility or on the PSC. So we've had a chance to work in partnership with him, and he does a great job advocating for his customers. The timeline for CCEs, if we pass it this year, and I have to say that, with each year that goes by, there's sort of this like ticking clock on, 10 years to really radically shift our behavior in terms of the climate impact. So I always feel a great deal of pressure to move things. And so really, really hope we get this one passed this year and other significant legislation. So if we pass it this year, then there's roughly 15 to 18 months, I think, for the Public Service Commission to establish regulations. And then within that time frame, there's the time that it would take for the county to establish its rules. Remember, I talked about the ordinance that the county would have to pass. And so you could conceivably see best case scenario if everything moves along without delay, which sometimes when you're talking about regulatory processes, you end up with delay. But best case scenario, you might end up with regulations in 2020, late 2023, in the fall of 2023, and then January of 2024, you might actually have a CCA that's up and running. That's sort of, I think, a good case scenario. And then you would have, it's a 7-year pilot, but the bill doesn't say that nothing can change in that 7 years. It doesn't say nobody else can join the pilot, in those 7 years. So again, this is where I think, to the extent that the county and others are watching the development, there may be the possibility to come back with legislation to expand it in other ways.
Great. As a follow-on, a questioner asked what they could do to help support the legislation in the upcoming Maryland session.
Oh, that's my favorite question. Thank you. Yeah, so I think it's always important to be in touch with your legislators about what's important to you. Even if literally, if you don't regularly communicate with your legislators, you should just send them an email and say, these things matter to me, like tomorrow, tonight, maybe. And so that's generally a good practice, but also specifically as it relates to this, I think most of the Frederick legislators aren't on the committees that it has to get out of, but they will have votes on the floor, and they can pressure their colleagues who are on the committees that it has to get out of. And I think it's actually sometimes when there's a pilot project that's restricted to a particular county, other legislators might just sort of ignore it and not really engage with it. And so I think it's useful for them to hear, like, look, even though that's not going to affect us right away, we're really interested in that being a possibility and over time being able to engage with it. So it'd be really important for them to hear that. Specifically, we did get it out of the House Economic Matters Committee, but if anyone is represented by someone on ECM or has people, friends who are represented by someone on ECM or the Senate Finance Committee, those are really the places where we need to put the most pressure, because those are the committees it's got to get out of to get onto the floor. And often that's kind of where bills die, is in the committees as opposed to on the floor.
Great. A general question I'll throw to anyone who wants to answer it. Please explain what a renewable energy credit is, or credits are, RECs, and how they work and how they differ, if at all, between themselves and solar renewable energy credits, RECs, SRECs. Does anybody want to take on that question?
I'll take it on.
Thank you, Jennifer.
You're welcome. So when an electron is generated from wherever it is, a solar panel or a wind turbine, you can't hold it in your hand like you can like a lump of coal or a gallon of oil. So what is issued is a renewable energy credit. And it's issued stating that this electron has been generated. And so companies will purchase that, and that electron will go into the grid. You hold on to the renewable energy credit. And it's retired, meaning that it can't be counted again. So a wind turbine spins, it generates electricity, you get a REC, renewable energy credit for that, and then it's retired, meaning that ship has sailed. We cannot use it again. So that's how renewable energy works, because you can't really hold an electron in your hand from something that's generated from the sun or the wind or the water. You just have to know that those electrons are being counted, tallied for, and that they're being regulated. Basically,
It's also a market for them, right?
I can add a little bit to that. RECs are generally measured in terms of a kilowatt hour. And the reason why RECs are out there and the reason why they have a value is because utilities have a requirement to produce so much energy from renewable sources. They can choose to do it by building their own, but maybe they don't have enough capacity of their own. So they have to meet the rules, they will buy RECs to offset what they don't have themselves. And so that's why the REC has value. The value of that REC goes up and down with the market, and REC prices have been all over the map in Maryland. When they go down, it's not necessarily the greatest thing for people who have solar, but it also means that there's been a lot of renewable energy added to the grid. So on the one point of view, it shows the market's working.
And that's a great point. So something that I may have missed is that you can purchase RECs that are being generated not on your behalf, but on somebody else's behalf.
Yeah.
And, or you can, as in a company like Clean Choice, we're part of the utility grid. So we purchase RECs that will be generated and hold on to them, if that makes, I know it's a complicated issue. I'm trying to make it, you know, seem more down to earth, but what basically is, if you're part of the utility grid, you can purchase RECs beforehand on your behalf. So
And
those,
Yeah,
Yeah.
one last thing, the RECs for homeowners, RECs only really matter if you own the system.
exactly,
Otherwise, the owner has it. So unless you own your own solar, you don't have to worry about the complication of RECs. If you do own your own solar, last I looked at it, you can actually keep a REC for 3 years. So if the price is low, you can kind of wait and kind of gamble and see if the price is going to go up or down, and maybe save your RECs and sell them later.
it's kind of like a stock if you
Yeah.
own your solar system. So if you own your solar system and you're generating RECs, it's kind of like a stock where you could trade it and value it exactly as you say, Ron. But when you're dealing with clean electricity, to understand a REC, it's just a meter and a proof that the electron is being generated on your behalf.
Very good. Thank
May I
you.
add something? May I add something, John?
Sure, but certainly.
I just would like to add something. When, just one final point is that once you, if you have had SRECs and you sell them, you can no longer say that you are using solar energy.
Very good. Very
That's
good.
right.
A last question for Gary. Lorig mentioned being a power producer as well as being a subscriber in a community solar project. If I am producing the majority of the power I use and am purchasing the remaining power through the PSC from renewable producers, is there any further advantage to joining a community solar effort? May locality of production be the most important thing?
Sure. I mean, the biggest, well, there's two big advantages. One is that you're purchasing from a local source. The other is that you're getting a discount. So it's, you know, anywhere from 5 to 20 to 30% discount on your on the value of your solar. So you're saving money as well as buying from a local source.
Very good. Finally, I think that is all our Q&As. Jane has reminded me that to please remind everyone that before you close out the link, the explanatory handout is in the chat and also in the email everyone received containing the link to the workshop.
Thanks so much, John.